I had just concluded my quarterly presentation, a meticulously crafted, data-driven showcase of how we'd surpassed the $50 million revenue milestone, when the new CEO, Damon Reeves, rose from his seat, adjusted his cufflinks, and cleared his throat. "Before we wrap up," he said, his grin sharp but hollow, "I have one final announcement regarding our leadership restructuring." My hand froze over the trackpad, the final slide. A vibrant graphic proclaiming Q2 revenue surge, a record-breaking quarter, still glowing behind me. Damon paced deliberately toward the front of the conference room as the executive team sat in tense silence. Some wore puzzled expressions. Others, those who'd been murmuring in corners recently, avoided my gaze. "As of today," Damon continued, "Olivia will be stepping down as Chief Operating Officer. Her contributions have been invaluable, and we're deeply grateful." He paused, letting the words hang. "But as we shift toward aggressive scalability, we need fewer bottlenecks in operations and more agile decision-making. Olivia's strength lies in strategic discipline, but we must be faster, leaner." A heavy, almost shameful silence blanketed the room, not one of shock, but of quiet complicity. Damon's tone turned casual, cutting. "I believe your exact words last week, Olivia, were, 'We should hire carefully and invest in development before scaling too quickly.' That kind of caution has its place, but not now. Thank you for your service." He turned to the team, as if that settled everything. I met his gaze, this man who'd been with the company for barely 3 months, and offered a calm smile. "I appreciate the clarity," I said, my voice steady, no dramatics, no tears, no protests. Just silence. Then I stepped aside as Damon seized the projector and launched into a slide titled Phase 2 Structural Optimization. I walked back to my office, my steps as measured as if I were merely heading to lunch. They didn't know. They had no idea what I'd already set in motion. 2 months earlier, when the board appointed Damon, I'd sensed a shift. He came from a world of high-turnover venture capital firms, where decisions were driven by spreadsheets and ego, not people. From his first day, he viewed me not as a collaborator, but as an obstacle to flatten. 6 years ago, I'd founded the company's original product line. I'd built the team, written the operations manual, and when our founding CEO stepped down for health reasons, I'd steadied the ship through the storm. I never sought praise, only loyalty. I received neither. Instead, I noticed subtle changes, meetings I wasn't invited to, strategies overturned without consultation, and a growing sense that Damon was weaving a narrative that excluded me. Then, one afternoon, I overheard his assistant on speakerphone, arranging a lunch with our largest vendor, my vendor, the one I'd personally negotiated contracts with for 5 years. "The idea," Damon had told the vendor's representative, "is to phase Olivia out quietly. It'll make things smoother." They wanted to erase me, but I'd already taken precautions. I'd seen the signs, and I knew something they didn't. Our biggest vendor, Chrono Core Systems, was in financial trouble. I'd been discreetly reviewing their quarterly filings and learned they were seeking a buyout. The opportunity was ripe. So, I reached out to an old friend from grad school, now a private equity partner in Boston. Through a holding company I'd quietly established the previous year, we made an offer for Chrono Core Systems, a clean, silent, and entirely legal acquisition. By the time Damon called their CEO to sideline me from vendor negotiations, he was met with a polite but firm response. All future communications would go through the holding company's new leadership. He didn't connect the dots. So, when he announced my termination before the team, his smile radiating triumph as if he'd cleared the final hurdle to his Phase 2, I didn't flinch. While Damon was sharpening his axe, I was quietly buying the ground beneath his feet. Back in my office, I packed deliberately. A family photo, the brass fountain pen my team gifted me last Christmas, a leather-bound copy of the Lean Startup filled with my handwritten notes. Each item went neatly into a box. Through the glass wall, I saw Damon chuckling with the CFO. I smiled softly, a private acknowledgement of what was coming. Tomorrow, the emails would begin. Contracts would shift. By Friday, that smug confidence would crumble into panic. The lifeblood of the company's supply chain, the irreplaceable chronocore systems, now answered to me. On Friday morning, I received a curt email from HR, subject line, "Transition plan." "Olivia, please complete the enclosed checklist by 5 p.m. today," it read. "We'll arrange your severance and benefits transfer accordingly. Also, Damon asked if you'd be willing to draft a knowledge transfer document for your replacement. Best, Camille, People Operations." I laughed quietly. The man who'd fired me in front of my team now wanted a favor, as if we were exchanging pleasantries. "Still worker." "Still," I replied briefly. "Camille, I'll ensure all deliverables are documented. Regards, Olivia." This wasn't just professionalism, it was calculated. Every file I submitted would be precise, thorough, yet subtly incomplete, ensuring their dependence on a vendor they no longer controlled. Chronocore Systems. They still hadn't pieced it together. At 10:17 a.m., my attorney, Michelle, called. "They're starting to sniff around," she said. "A junior procurement manager from your old company contacted Chronocore, asking why they haven't signed off on a new delivery schedule." "And?" I asked. We responded formally, citing the recent acquisition and stating that the new leadership team will handle future discussions directly. I nodded. They'll escalate by Monday, especially when they realize how critical Chronocore is to their Phase 2 rollout. Michelle's voice carried a hint of amusement. "They've got a dependency they didn't even bother to vet. Congratulations, Olivia. You own their supply chain." I leaned back in my chair, my gaze settling on the stack of framed awards I hadn't yet packed. Most celebrated my achievements in operations excellence, cost savings, and strategic procurement, all earned under my leadership. The company had once been proud of me, until I became an inconvenience. That evening, I met Clara, one of the few colleagues I still trusted, at our usual wine bar. She slid into the booth, eyes wide. "Everyone's talking about it," she said. Damon was insufferably cocky all afternoon, but around 3:00 p.m. his mood shifted. Something rattled him. I stirred my drink. "Was it about Chronocore?" She nodded. "They were supposed to finalize next quarter's contract this week, but the call got redirected. Legal mentioned a change in ownership structure, and now Damon's demanding answers." I raised an eyebrow. "So he's finally paying attention?" Clara leaned closer, her voice low. "He doesn't know, does he?" I smiled faintly. "Not yet." Below is the continuation of the narrative, rewritten in English to align seamlessly with the previous segments, maintaining the protagonist's name as Olivia, preserving the original content and meaning with approximately 10 to 15% rephrasing for clarity and flow. Spelling and grammatical errors have been corrected, and the story is structured into coherent paragraphs to ensure a continuous, uninterrupted narrative. The tone, intent, and strategic nuance of Olivia's calculated moves remain intact, with logical transitions to connect this new input to the earlier context. Clara leaned back, her eyes searching mine. "What are you going to do?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Nothing. I already did it." On Saturday, I received a meeting request, not from Damon, but from Trevor, Techline's procurement lead. "Hi, Olivia," his email read. "I know things ended awkwardly, but I was hoping to discuss the Chronocore contract. There's some internal confusion, and you're the only one who handled those negotiations. Would you be open to a quick call?" I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because it wasn't my role anymore. Instead, Michelle, my attorney, sent a formal letter on behalf of Verity Partners, LLC, my holding company, informing Techline that all future negotiations for Chronocore's services would go through Verity's new client relations lead, me. Sunday evening, just after 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. An unknown caller, Damon Reeves. One missed call, one voicemail. I didn't listen. Michelle had advised me, "Let your silence be the loudest thing in the room." She was right. Monday morning struck Techline's headquarters like a thunderbolt. I woke early, brewed my coffee, and logged into the internal dashboards I still had temporary access to via the vendor portal. In bold red, unconfirmed, fourth quarter supplier contracts pending approval. That unresolved status threatened to halt 3 major product lines. At 8:02 a.m., Clara texted, Damon stormed into the 8 a.m. all hands. Nobody knows what's happening. He looks like he hasn't slept. By 10:30 a.m., LinkedIn was alight with activity. A press release had dropped. Chrono Core Systems announces new ownership under Verity Partners, LLC. The acquisition marks a new chapter in operational leadership and client engagement. Our mission remains unchanged, to provide best-in-class enterprise solutions to our valued clients. My name wasn't mentioned, but those who knew me understood. At 11:12 a.m., a one-line email from Damon landed in my inbox. "We need to talk, urgently." I forwarded it to Michelle. She called 10 minutes later, laughing. "He's panicking. He finally realized who bought the kingdom he thought he ruled." I hadn't even played my next card. Chrono Core wasn't just a supplier of software components. It controlled the data architecture for Techline's flagship project, an AI-powered operations hub Damon had bet his entire CEO reputation on. Without Chrono Core's custom data libraries, that project would collapse before it could launch. I leaned back, staring at the boxed-up office gear still sitting by my apartment's entryway, remnants of a role I'd been forced to leave. In the hallway outside, the faint echo of footsteps passed my door. I smiled faintly, knowing the real moves were still to come. I hadn't decided whether to unpack the boxed-up office gear by my apartment's entryway or donate it. It didn't matter anymore. On paper, I no longer worked at Techline, but in reality, they were working for me. By Tuesday morning, the storm had fully hit Techline's headquarters. I didn't need internal dashboard access to see the fallout. The tremors were rippling across LinkedIn. A project manager had discreetly updated her status to "open to work." 2 engineers from the AI division reposted the Chrono Core acquisition announcement with cryptic captions: "Big industry moves ahead," and "One door closes, another opens." The real chaos surfaced in a calendar invite from Damon's assistant, subject line: "Emergency leadership meeting, 9 a.m., mandatory attendance." At 8:44 a.m., Clara texted, "He's sweating, literally. We all saw him walk in." "He looks like someone handed him a resignation letter written in blood." I smiled into my coffee cup. This wasn't about personal revenge. I had no interest in watching Damon unravel for its own sake. But I was keenly interested in the board realizing the cost of entrusting the company to a man who couldn't see 3 moves ahead. That morning, Michelle and I finalized a licensing proposal for Techline. It wasn't vindictive, just costly. Chrono Core had previously operated under a volume discount model I'd personally negotiated to support Techline's growth. That deal was gone. In its place, we offered a pay-as-you-go structure billed monthly with a premium for data hosting, integration support, and, most crucially, access to the proprietary AI learning modules powering Techline's next-generation Ops Hub. Michelle read the terms aloud, relishing each line. Standard enterprise rates, plus a 22% premium for custom dependencies, plus exclusivity protections. Oh, and public acknowledgement of Chrono Core's new ownership, naturally. "Send it before lunch," I said. "It'll give them just enough time to lose their appetites." That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Clara. "Olivia, the engineers figured it out. You bought Chrono Core? It's flying through Slack. Damon's livid." He pulled the entire DevOps team into a private meeting, locked door and all. A moment later, she added, "P.S. 2 directors just asked me if you're hiring." I typed a reply, but paused before sending it. Better to let the uncertainty work its magic. Meanwhile, Michelle received a formal response from Techline's legal department. They acknowledged our licensing offer but stopped short of accepting it, requesting a discussion on potential alternative licensing terms. I leaned back, picturing the boardroom scramble. They were beginning to understand the price of underestimating me. Techline's legal team was stalling, hoping I'd budge. They couldn't afford our terms, and they wanted me to flinch. I didn't. Instead, Michelle sent a concise, polite response. "As outlined in our offer, these terms are non-negotiable unless accompanied by a substantial equity stake or public acquisition offer. We understand if Techline prefers to seek alternative vendors." There were no alternatives. Chrono Core Systems wasn't just a supplier, it was Techline's infrastructure. Replacing it wasn't like swapping office furniture. It would take at least 18 months to rebuild what we'd developed together. Techline didn't have that kind of time, and they knew it. That evening, I walked through Verity Partners' new downtown office, now Chronocore's updated headquarters. Construction crews were putting the final touches on glass walls for our strategy lab, where teams were installing whiteboards and tech screens. For the first time in months, a quiet sense of belonging settled over me, a feeling I hadn't known in a long time. My phone buzzed, an unknown number, another voicemail. I played it. "Olivia, this is Damon," the message began, his voice strained. "I think we need to start over. I don't know what your endgame is, but you're putting a lot of people at risk. People who supported you for years. Just think about that. You were better than this." The audacity, cloaked in feigned concern, made me shake my head. I had put people at risk? This was the man who'd fired me in front of the executive team, pushed reckless expansion plans, slashed onboarding and QA budgets, and eliminated remote work to boost productivity. Then pointed fingers at me when senior developers quit. Now, suddenly, he was the victim? Damon wasn't worried about the staff. He was terrified of the board. Clara confirmed it the next morning. "He tried to spin the vendor issue as unexpected market volatility," she texted. "The board isn't buying it." The board's response was swift. Clara's next message detailed the fallout. They demanded a full audit of supplier dependencies. Damon deflected, so they brought in audit counsel. This is unraveling fast. I think he knows he's done. At noon, my inbox pinged with a new email, subject line, "Immediate assistance requested," from Techline's board chair, Richard Alvarez. "Dr. Monroe," it began, "on behalf of the board of directors at Techline, I'd like to request a confidential meeting at your earliest availability. We are reviewing the current leadership's handling of strategic partnerships and understand you may have insights relevant to our assessment. Please let us know a convenient time to speak." I smiled. This was unexpected, but intriguing. I replied promptly, "Mr. Alvarez, I'd be happy to meet later this week. Thursday or Friday morning would work well. Please let me know what suits your schedule. Respectfully, Olivia Monroe, Managing Partner, Verity Partners." As I hit send on my reply to Richard Alvarez, I leaned back in my chair, my gaze settling on a framed quote on my shelf, a gift from a Techline engineer years ago. "Be the kind of leader your future self won't have to apologize for." I had no apologies to offer. While Damon played office politics, I'd built real power, and the game was far from over. Thursday morning dawned crisp and cold, the air carrying a fitting edge. I dressed with precision, a tailored navy pantsuit, silver cufflinks, and the sapphire ring my grandmother had left me, an ensemble that declared, "I don't work for you, but you'll wish I did." At exactly 9 a.m., I stepped into a private boardroom on the 32nd floor of the Halberton Tower, where Techline's board had secured space for what they called a confidential off-site review. The receptionist greeted me warmly. "Dr. Monroe, they're expecting you." Inside, Richard Alvarez, the board chairman, rose to shake my hand. "Thank you for coming, Olivia. We appreciate you making the time." "Of course," I replied, my tone steady as I returned his handshake. The room was hushed, its dark walnut paneling and untouched coffee carafe lending a somber air. 6 board members sat around the table, their expressions a mix of guarded neutrality and unease. They didn't know what to expect: anger, bitterness, or arrogance. Instead, I offered calm authority. "I understand you've requested insight into the Chronocore situation," I began. Richard nodded. "It's escalated beyond what we anticipated." "I figured it might," I said, placing a sleek leather folder on the table. "Here's a detailed timeline," I continued, "including emails, correspondence, and financial filings, all confirming that Chronocore Systems was fully acquired by Verity Partners 3 weeks ago. We are now the exclusive provider of your AI systems architecture and own the data modules powering over 60% of your next-generation rollout." The room fell silent. "You'll also note," I added, "that at the time of the acquisition, I was no longer employed by Techline. Legally, there's no conflict of interest. Only a failure by your current leadership to recognize operational risk. A board member in a gray suit leaned forward. Why didn't Damon flag this? I met his gaze evenly. Perhaps because he didn't see it coming. The words landed heavily, and I watched them shift uncomfortably in their seats. Richard cleared his throat. He told us the vendor disruption was due to internal politics. I shook my head at Richard Alvarez's mention of Damon's excuse. Chronocore Systems hasn't overextended. It's more stable now than it's been in 5 years. What's unstable is Damon's belief that eliminating institutional knowledge was the way forward. I paused, then added quietly, sometimes the bottleneck isn't the one moving slowly, it's the one who doesn't realize what they're holding back. The board members exchanged glances, the weight of my words settling in. Later that day, back at Verity Partners' office, I met with my new executive team to review the final terms of the licensing agreement we'd urged Techline to sign. It's generous, Michelle said. We even included a 6-month grace period at their old pricing tier to soften the impact. They won't see it that way, I replied. But it's fair. We're not here to punish. We're here to protect our product and set a precedent. Across the table, our CTO, Eli, pulled up a live dashboard tracking incoming client inquiries. Since the press release, Eli said, we've had 12 enterprise-level companies reach out. Some are Techline's direct competitors, asking about migrating to our platform. I scanned the list, and 2 names stood out immediately. For years at Techline, I'd pursued those clients, only to be told they were untouchable. Now they were coming to me. By Friday, Techline's board had called an emergency executive session. Clara kept me updated via text. Rumor is Damon won't survive the weekend. They've pulled his calendar access. Legal's involved. Also, fun fact, he just realized the DevOps team copied you on the last documentation repo before you left. The audit trails are time-stamped. It proves you were acting in good faith the whole time. He's unraveling. I stared at the word unraveling. It didn't bring joy. It brought closure. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about recognition, about being pushed aside after 6 years of building Techline from the ground up, told I was in the way. It was about proving the cost of dismissing the woman who had pored over every line of code, forged every key partnership, and mentored half the team now holding the company together. That evening, just before shutting my laptop for the weekend, a new email arrived, subject line, formal response to licensing proposal, from Richard Alvarez. Dr. Monroe, it read, the board has reviewed the proposal from Verity Partners. We are prepared to accept the terms as outlined, including the updated pricing model, acknowledgement of new ownership, and the 6-month transition clause. We also wish to extend an apology for the manner of your departure. We understand this does not undo the past, but we hope it opens the door to a more respectful professional relationship moving forward. Thank you for your time and for reminding us what true leadership looks like. I leaned back, the words sinking in. The game was over, and I'd won. Not just power, but respect. I read Richard Alvarez's email twice, then once more, letting the board's apology and acceptance sink in. I forwarded it to Michelle, who replied instantly, well, that's about as close to a corporate confession as you'll get. I leaned back in my chair, gazing at the flickering lights of the city skyline. Below, the streets pulsed with people rushing, chasing, climbing. But me? I wasn't climbing anymore. I'd arrived. Monday morning began with an eerie calm, the kind that signals an impending collapse. I reached Verity Partners headquarters just before 8 a.m., coffee in hand, and opened my inbox. A deluge of overnight alerts, press inquiries, and internal updates awaited. The story had broken. CEO ousted in corporate shakeup. Techline board removes Damon Reeves amid vendor crisis. The headline dominated tech blogs, financial news, and even trended on LinkedIn under Leadership Matters. I clicked an article scanning for familiar names. A source close to the board was quoted, stating that Damon's failure to assess critical supplier risks, coupled with the loss of Chronocore Systems, had caused irreparable reputational damage and jeopardized multiple product lines. He was out, effective immediately. Clara confirmed it within the hour. It's real. Damon cleared his desk at 7 a.m. No speech, no drama. He didn't even look up on his way out. The interim CEO is Richard Donovan, former operations head at Iron Core before their acquisition. Total cleanup guy. P.S. They're rebranding the AI Ops Hub to distance it from Phase 2. People are calling it the Ghost Project internally. She attached a GIF of someone dousing a fire. I smiled, but the chaos didn't spark triumph. It brought a steady resolve. Damon's fall was inevitable, but what came next mattered more. At 11:00 a.m., I walked into Verity's product lab for a team debrief. Our engineers were gearing up for a technical rollout for new enterprise clients, many of whom had reached out after Techline's stumble. Before we started, Eli, our CTO, pulled me aside, his eyes wide. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Techline sent over a draft of the public licensing agreement. They included your name." I blinked. "You're joking." "Not even a little," he replied. They wrote, "Technology developed by Olivia Monroe, licensed exclusively through Verity Partners." Front and center. Legal must have pushed it through. I stared at the document, the words a quiet vindication. After being erased, I was now etched into their future, not just as a vendor, but as the architect of their survival. The weight of it settled over me, not as pride, but as proof of what I'd built. Seeing my name in the licensing agreement, official, public, undeniable, felt like taking my first full breath after months submerged. "They never said it before," I whispered to Eli. "Not once. Not when I built the system, not when it launched, not even after the first 1,000,000 users." He smiled. "They're saying it now, loud and clear." By Tuesday, we held a private strategy session at Verity Partners to review migration requests from 12 former Techline clients, including 3 untouchable accounts I'd once pitched in vain. Back then, Techline executives dismissed my efforts before I could finish. Now, these clients were knocking, not drawn by flashy presentations or clever branding, but by the truth I'd always championed. The value wasn't in the name, but in the work. That afternoon, my phone rang with a voice from the past, Layla Grant, one of the few senior women in Techline's leadership during my early years. Layla, sharp and empathetic, had been pushed out 2 years before me in a similar realignment. "Olivia," she said, "I've been watching this unfold. You have no idea what it's done for women in tech, especially those over 40. I fell silent, caught off guard. "You didn't just win," she continued. "You showed that dignity and patience can align with strategy, that you can outmaneuver someone without sinking to their level. It's rare, and it's powerful." Her words lingered long after we hung up, revealing an impact I hadn't anticipated. This wasn't just a comeback, it was a message. You can fight back without becoming the villain. It was a legacy I hadn't planned, but now carried with pride. By Wednesday, Techline issued a company-wide announcement. Techline has reached a strategic agreement with Verity Partners for continued access to the Chrono Core platform. We are committed to maintaining operational excellence as we evolve under new leadership. Buried at the bottom was a simple line acknowledging me by name. No fanfare, no embellishments, just the truth. It was enough. Meanwhile, Verity's marketing team was polishing a keynote I'd been invited to deliver at the Global Technology Leadership Forum next month, titled, "When the System Says You're Replaceable and You Prove It Wrong." That evening, I returned home to find a handwritten note in my mailbox, no return address. Inside, a card bore a single line. "You've become the story I tell my daughter when she thinks she's not strong enough." No name, no signature, just that. I held the card, its weight far greater than the paper it was written on, and knew this was no longer just my story. I pressed the anonymous card to my chest, letting the weight of its words settle. Not pride, not vengeance, but clarity. This wasn't about what Techline had stripped away. It was about what I'd reclaimed. My name, my work, my worth, and I wasn't finished. 1 year after I'd carried my belongings out of Techline's glass tower in a plain cardboard box, I stepped into Verity Partners' headquarters, morning light spilling across the polished floor. It was a quiet milestone, marked not by fanfare but by the soft click of my heels and the steady hum of a company I'd built from the ground up. As I headed toward my office, Eli waved me down from the strategy room. "You're going to want to see this," he said, grinning. I stepped inside to find our analytics dashboard glowing on the wall, cycling through live client data that demanded attention. The numbers were striking: 98% client retention, 14 new enterprise onboardings in the last quarter, and revenue growth up 31% year over year. Then Eli pulled up the most telling figure: Techline's projected market share loss, 27% net migration to Verity's infrastructure, including 9 of their top 20 former accounts. "They tried to downplay it at first," Eli said, "but investors are asking hard questions, and now they're answering." I raised an eyebrow. "Answering how?" He turned to the screen to reveal a statement just posted on Techline's investor relations site. "We acknowledge that strategic missteps, including the mishandling of key partnerships, contributed to the challenges we faced last year. We also recognize the foundational work of former executives, including Olivia Monroe, in building the operational systems that continue to shape the market." My name, in print, tied publicly to my work. Not a whispered apology, but a clear truth. I leaned against the table, silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of it. Eli watched me, then said, "It's not everything, but it's something." "It's enough," I replied. I didn't need accolades. I needed the truth acknowledged. Later that day, I reviewed reports from our legal team confirming 3 new licensing agreements, including one with Techline's oldest partner, now fully transitioned to Verity's system. Michelle messaged me shortly after. "They'll try to buy time with new branding, new leadership, PR spins, but their core problem remains. They forgot the people who built their foundation. You reminded them, Olivia, without ever raising your voice." I didn't respond immediately, letting her words settle. The city hummed below, but I was no longer part of its rush. I stood still, rooted in the clarity of what I'd built, not just a company, but a legacy that spoke louder than any boardroom ever could. I sat at my desk, rereading Michelle's message, letting its truth sink in. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? Every calculated move, every moment I stayed composed when they expected me to shatter. It wasn't about ego. It was about proving that grace and power could coexist. That evening, as I walked through Verity Partners' quiet halls, I noticed something new near the entryway. A framed plaque, unapproved but instantly recognizable. It read, "The real legacy of innovation is not the product. It's the people who make it possible." Beneath, in smaller text, was my name, Olivia Monroe. I stood there, the hallway lights glinting off the glass, and let the moment settle. Then my phone buzzed in my coat pocket, a message from Clara. "Just wanted you to know I officially start Monday. Thank you for keeping the door open. It feels like I'm coming home." I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Clara, ever loyal, had been among the last to leave Techline, but now she was ready to grow beyond the limits that company had imposed. "Welcome back," I replied. "There's so much more we're going to build." That night, at home, I pulled a small box from the back of my closet, still holding relics from my final day at Techline: my mug, the team's farewell note, the brass pen they'd given me when we hit $50 million in revenue. I studied each item, not with regret, but with clarity. Those years hadn't been lost. They'd forged me, tempered me, made this moment possible. A year ago, Techline called me a bottleneck, blind to the truth. I wasn't holding the company back. I was holding it together. Now, I was building something stronger, on my own terms, with the right people by my side. My name stood where it belonged, not buried in fine print or borrowed for someone else's glory, but written clearly, boldly, permanently, at the forefront. Verity Partners wasn't just a company, it was a testament to what I'd always known. True leadership doesn't shout, it builds, it endures, it inspires. As I closed the box and turned off the light, I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the promise of what lay ahead, a future where my work, my worth, and my legacy would continue to shine.